So Chase Claypool officially no longer a Chicago Bear. His tenure with the Bears did not go as the Bears had hoped after trading a second-round pick for Chase Claypool in early November of last season to try to help give Justin Fields some weapons. And now we have Chase Claypool being traded to the Miami Dolphins, per Adam Schefter saying, Dolphins announced they have agreed to terms on a trade with the Chicago Bears for wide receiver Chase Claypool and a 2025 7th-round pick in exchange for a 2025 6th-round pick pending a physical. So Chase Claypool had some issues in Pittsburgh after 2 seasons, and if we look back to a report that came out at that time as to why seemingly things broke up between Claypool and the Steelers, this is from Josina Anderson in November of 2022, right around when he got traded, saying there was a lot of chatter on the Steelers potentially trading Chase Claypool leading into today, as this move was authorized weeks ago, and the internal impression is that Claypool felt he's a number 1 talent, while the Steelers feel ready to give rookie George Pickens an expanded role. So, on the Steelers, Claypool seemed to not be happy with his role, and this is even what he said after being traded right when he got to Chicago, saying this: I just think at some point, the perspective on me at some point was like, oh, he's not a red zone threat for some reason, or he's not a deep threat for some reason, Claypool said. I'm not sure why that happened. I started getting formationed away from those things. It was hard for me to make big plays because anytime there was a big play drawn up, I was like on the other side. And now if we look at what happened here in Chicago, the same thing happened. He became unhappy with his role. He didn't like how the Bears were using him, just like he didn't like how the Steelers were using him in his 3rd season. And if we look back to a couple weeks ago, which really led to all of this going down and Claypool no longer being on the Bears roster, it was when a reporter asked him if the Bears were putting him in the best position to thrive. He sits there. You can see him thinking about if he's actually going to say it. He shakes his head and says no. So obviously at that point, he has to know that, you know, his relationship with the Bears and how he's viewed there would probably go downhill if he tells the media, yeah, they're not using me correctly. And so after that point, the Bears, of course, decide to make him inactive for the past 2 games, and now he gets traded. And I think Claypool had to know that his words would lead to something changing. And there was even a clip in the first few weeks of the season showing tons of Chase Claypool clips where he was showing absolutely no effort. And so it seems like now it's happened to Claypool in 2 situations. In Pittsburgh, his first 2 years go well. He's playing with Ben Roethlisberger. Year 3, he comes in with Kenny Pickett. Seemingly reported from Josina Anderson, the Steelers weren't really using him as he wanted to be used as a number 1 talent. He gets frustrated there, and the Steelers trade him to Chicago, and now the Bears are having to trade him to the Dolphins because a similar scenario happened where Claypool isn't happy. And so if you're the Bears, it's a tough situation because at the time, looking at the Bears, trading for a weapon, it made some kind of sense. Like, okay, you need to get Justin Fields some more help. He needs some more receiver options. And so the Bears give away a 2nd-round pick. And now if you look at it, they just traded him to the Dolphins, where the Dolphins, all they had to do was, trade a 6th for a 7th. The Bears basically go from having a 7th-round pick to a 6th-round pick. And so that's a big loss for the Bears, considering they could have used a 2nd-round pick on many different guys this past year instead of basically wasting it on Chase Claypool. If you look at a few receivers drafted in round 2, they could have gotten Jonathan Mingo, Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, Marvin Mims. And now they're sitting here without Chase Claypool and without that 2nd-round pick. Luckily for the Bears, they're starting to play somewhat well the past couple games on offense, and it was when Chase Claypool wasn't playing, interestingly enough. And so going forward, looking at Chase Claypool and his fit with the Dolphins, he's gotten frustrated in his 2 seasons when he's playing with somewhat unexperienced quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett and Justin Fields. And now he is with Tua, who is playing very, very well. The Dolphins have the best offense in the NFL. And Claypool has to know going to Miami that he's not going to be the guy. He's not going to be the number 2 guy at minimum. They have Tyreek Hill. They have Jalen Waddle, 2 of the fastest, best receivers in the NFL. But it is an interesting fit just because if you look at Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they're both somewhat undersized receivers at 5'10", where Claypool is the big kind of physical receiver at 6'4", 238. And so if Claypool can get back to how he was playing in his first season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, this could be a steal for the Dolphins because we've seen Claypool take a dip down the past couple seasons. I think that's partly due to some of his effort, but also Kenny Pickett, somewhat inexperienced Justin Fields, trying to figure things out, and maybe he just needs another fresh start. But it has happened in 2 separate places where he gets frustrated with the way he's being used, and we'll see if he gets frustrated here as well, or if he's able to make things work because he's happy that he's winning. Because it seemed that he just sort of was growing tired of being in Chicago and didn't feel like he was getting the opportunities. And so it seemed to be somewhat of a problem there, and you would assume that's a distraction in the locker room. So going to Miami, I don't think some of those issues will occur this time, considering they are winning and they have some other top tier receivers. So it's not like, he can really cause that much of a problem if he doesn't pan out here. The Dolphins don't really, risk too much in the capital they sent over for him. So all in all, the Bears, maybe they should have done more due diligence trying to figure out, okay, the thing that happened to Claypool in Pittsburgh, growing unhappy there, maybe they should have thought, well, could that happen here? Maybe they were optimistic that Fields in this offense would play really well and Claypool would play really well. Because that didn't happen, Claypool grew frustrated. So unfortunate for the Bears losing that second round pick, but now the Dolphins, barely giving anything. I'd say it's a low risk, potentially moderate reward scenario for the Dolphins. And if you're Claypool, you're on a winning team now, one of the best teams in the league, and so he has to be somewhat happy about that. If you'd like to get more NFL content like this, feel free to subscribe down below.